Hello, Reds. It's the late challenge, and Liverpool have scored their 48th winner after the 90th minute in a Premier League match. That's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest, before we start anything else, the very fact that happened and boils shitloads of piss across the nation, that'll do for me for starters. That's glorious for starters. It is 3 wins on the spin. I do need to turn down the volume on the iPad. I've done that. It is 3 wins on the spin for Liverpool, 3 clean sheets on the spin for Liverpool, and best of all, 3 points for Liverpool, and a little bit of revenge as well, as the Reds haven't been great against Nottingham Forest in recent times, have they? It's one of the biggest robberies I've seen in the Premier League this season, said Jamie Carragher on Sky Sports. So was it? Was it luck? Was it fight? Was it spirit? Was it all of the above that has kept the Reds in the hunt for a Champions League spot? And are we seeing enough? And I'm not seeing people talk about this enough, so I'm throwing this in. Are we seeing enough to suggest that all will be well for next season? Because there are only 11 league games left now. And I think you want to see something you can take into next season before this season is out. And are we seeing that? Or are we just seeing scrapping for wins, sort of trotting along? And whisper it as well. Lots of criticism of yesterday's performance. But after conceding 3s and 4s far too regularly, I think it's 6 times, that's far too many for anyone's liking. Are we actually starting to become hard to score against? Are we... You know, you can talk about, like we couldn't get up the pitch very well and the midfield went missing and all this kind of stuff. But in terms of defending in our box, we didn't do a bad job, really, did we? Anyway, we'll get into all of that. Right, so, first half, Nottingham Forest, not great. Being labelled, even by the manager, as the worst half of football Liverpool have played this season. I'd maybe argue Palace, by the way, having been at that one.
Well, this is it. I didn't have the pleasure of watching that one live, so this one goes straight in at number 1 for me. But I just want to go back to 2 things you said just before that. First of all, 48, I cannot wait for number 50, by the way. That's going to be one hell of a celebration. Second of all, Cara, I can see why he says this is one of the biggest robberies. I don't fully agree because Liverpool were bad. There's no getting away from it. Liverpool were really, really bad. But I don't necessarily think Forest were that amazing. I mean, we'll go on to some of the stats around what they did. But apart from that shot for Hudson-Odoi inside the first 2 minutes or whatever, I don't think they ever really looked like scoring. Like you say, we defended our box really well. And yes, a lot of that is the kind of last-ditch throw bodies in front of the man done the defending you expect to see from teams at the bottom of the table. But that is also the kind of stuff that has been tripping Liverpool up in the past. So we are right to give them some credit for getting better at it. But, so in the time that I've been with my girlfriend, we've watched Liverpool games together loads, and I've always tried to be calm, measured. I don't want to give off the impression of one of those dickheads who lives and dies and gets really upset about football matches. But boy, did they test me yesterday. There was one moment where I think it was McAllister just kicks it out of play. Yeah. And I just jumped up off the sofa and was just like, what the fuck was that? And she gave me this look as if to say, are you aware of what you just did? And I was like, yeah, okay. And I sat back down. But my goodness me. One thing I said last week was whenever you expect them to be bad, they're good. And every time you expect them to be good, they're bad. Well, they conclusively proved that again, because I was going into this game with a bit of optimism that we'd be able to go out there, particularly in the first half, and maybe show a bit of ourselves. But they all looked like their heads were scrambled. And I'm really not entirely sure why. I mean, some of it I'll put down to the late change for Florian Wirtz. And yes, you can say, well, one player being out injured just before the game shouldn't make that much difference. But when you think about the role he has in the team, in terms of he is the creative fulcrum. He is the guy who everybody's going to be trying to pass to. You can see how it would have a different influence, but it still shouldn't have had that much of an influence.
No, absolutely not. And look, as you say, there's no excuse for literally putting the ball out the play under no pressure. And that was the thing that sort of, broken record time really been saying over and over on here that, Liverpool need to come out the traps a little bit faster, and far too regularly they haven't done. And this was another slow start where, in those early exchanges, you're looking at it and you're like, well, why are we second best in this already? Because that can help to define a half, a game, a result. And, Forest, rattle off 12 shots in the first half, which is the most any side's managed in the first half of a Premier League game since we lost 6-1 at Stoke. I was at that one as well. I would probably rate that as much worse than this, but anyway. But this isn't good and didn't look good in any way. And the stats read that way too. So in the first half, Forest have 59% possession. Liverpool only generate 0.06 expected goals. But equally, not as you said there, Mo, and then he said Norwich then, Nottingham Forest, only 0.89. So while they might have had 12 shots, not a lot of them were great.
8 of those shots were from outside the box as well.
And two were on target. One classed as the big chance, which is the one after 2 minutes. But even that's part of my point, really. After 2 minutes, 36 seconds, Alisson should not be saving from Hudson-Odoi. You should be pumped up. You should be ready to go. You should know what to expect. You should know that, in a game like that, on a Sunday, with the crowd up, with a new manager coming off the back of a good result in Europe, they're going to be bouncing, they're going to run hard, they're going to get into you, they're going to do all the stuff that you'd expect them to do, and you've got to match that. And, the manager says afterwards that, he spoke to them and said, well, we've played well in second halves after bad first halves before, and also, they were away in Europe on Thursday, didn't get back to the early hours of Friday morning, they might lose a bit of steam as well. So let's bear that in mind. And look, Liverpool were obviously better second half, but I don't know why that message isn't there in the first half.
Yeah.
And, as you say, what a lot of what Forest were doing was not rocket science. They were just closing people down quickly, getting stuck in, not giving you much time on the ball, that kind of thing. Liverpool should be able to fizz it about and take people on and cause them problems. And they didn't. All they did was cause themselves problems.
And it felt like it was one mistake made another mistake, It was almost like it was contagious. I saw the stat that they said that Forest won the ball back in the final third 7 times in the first half. I'm not sure they did win the ball back. I'm sure a lot of those they were just given the ball. I think it was about 10 minutes into the half where I started counting from when we had a goal kick, how long we kept hold of the ball. And I didn't get to 10 seconds, not one time. And part of that was poor kicking from the defenders and Ali in particular. But part of that was just brainlessness, going in heavy touches or loose passes that went behind the man. And it just felt like they needed a moment where they could all just kind of get together and just be like, come on, lads, let's sort this out. Clearly this is not what we want to be. We need to kick into gear. But in terms of why this keeps happening, I am kind of fascinated about it. And spoiler alert, I am planning to ask Arne Slot something about it on Friday, because it's getting to the point now where you do wonder, it can't be a coincidence that this keeps happening. There has to be either something continually going wrong, or maybe there is some logic behind it that we're not seeing. Maybe he's thinking, rather than going out hard from minute 1 and then running out of gas on 60, maybe he's saying part of this whole we're fitter now is that they want to be the fitter, fresher team in the last 20 where you win the game. And then that means in the first 25, they're maybe trying to conserve energy and trying to hold some stuff back. But all that does is concede the initiative again and again and again and again.
You're setting the tone.
And are we going to be able to get away with conceding the initiative but not conceding a goal? Because that happened in this game. It happened at Sunderland. It happened a little bit against Brighton. It happened against Man City. It didn't happen against Newcastle because they scored, but then that was the point in which they kicked in. So this is 4, 5, 6 games in a row now. In fact, I'd argue the last time Liverpool started really well was the last game they lost against Bournemouth. So you do wonder if it's something that they are being told, or whether this is just some pattern that they've kind of got themselves into.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't see how you would want to start a game like that in any way, and I just wonder psychologically, why are they not more switched on, and if that's a problem, why isn't something being done to work on that? The other thing I wonder about is, when we brought Slot in, or should always say Slot and his team, because it's not just him.
Of course.
But, one of the things that was said to have attracted Liverpool was the fact that there's a good record there around injury management, fitness management, and all the rest of it. And that was obviously felt that maybe, for all that, Klopp was absolutely brilliant, and we loved him and we had a great time with him as manager. Perhaps the injury record wasn't the best because it was deemed that his training was so intense. And, he had like Oxlade-Chamberlain as an example, saying that was the most intense he'd ever been trained in his career. And that's, someone who's been at Arsenal and so on. So I wonder, though, if we've dialed the training down to manage the injuries, have we gone too far? And almost is the flip side now that it's not intense enough. And you, therefore, if someone like Forest, who are pumped up, new manager, fighting for their lives in the league and all the rest of it, are they therefore coming out the traps ready to put more intensity into it than Liverpool are expecting to put in? And that's why we see what we see. I don't know. I mean, look, it's hard to know. It's one of those things that as fans we can only ever really guess
absolutely.
at, and you don't imagine whatever's asked of them that Slot is going to sit down and blow the lid off of how it is, and certainly none of the players are either. So we don't know in terms of how we started and the decisions made before we even sort of knew what was going to unfold. Obviously, losing Vert is a blow. There's no two ways about that. You've already said about him being the sort of the conduit for all the attack and play. And so you lose the conduit for all the attack and play, and you're just like, here's go. I know he looked undercooked. He didn't look ready. He was losing the ball. He was being out-muscled. And for me, looking at it was a bit like, well, why did it take half an hour to put him to right back and put Szoboszlai back? And in fact, why wasn't that just the plan in the first place? We can ask that. But in terms of the rest of the selection, there wasn't a whole lot else he could do, really, was there? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I wrote a piece on the Friday before talking about selection, and basically starting from the right back position and then kind of saying the influence that has on everywhere else, and the decision of whether you go with Gomez or whether you go with one of the midfielders, and then if it's Szoboszlai, you then rob them. The kind of combination Szoboszlai's had with Wirtz alongside them, and how important that's been to this renaissance, and all of the different variables, because essentially this was the first time, I think, in a while where Slot had proper options in terms of, do I pick this person or do I pick that person? Because if you think about that kind of box, the 4-2-2-2 thing that they did, I think it was in Marseille and Bournemouth, they could have gone with that, with Gravenberch, McAllister, Wirtz, Szoboszlai, and then maybe Ekitike and Salah. And then if you have Gomez on, then that means you've got Jones and Gakpo as two subs to kind of change the game. But then obviously once the Wirtz injury happens, that robs you of one straight away. And then for whatever reason, Slot decided that he'd rather have Szoboszlai at right back than Gomez. And it wasn't because of fitness, because someone asked him on Friday or Thursday, is Gomez fit enough to start? And it wasn't like, oh, we're not sure. It was like, yeah, he is. To the point where I thought he was going to start, but he didn't. And once he makes that decision, then all the other kind of decisions, like you say, fall in place. But I was kind of surprised that Szoboszlai started at right back, because when Liverpool played Forest before at home, he played in the one where they got beat 3-0, he played at right back there, and it was all right because they started with Hudson-Odoi on the bench. And the last two times they've been to Anfield, they started with Hudson-Odoi on the bench and tried to kind of like have a midfielder as a wide player. And obviously, if you're Szoboszlai, you're a makeshift right back. You prefer that than someone like Hudson-Odoi running at you. But when they've been at home, that's exactly what they've done. And what happened in those first 15 minutes? Forest were like, okay, we're just going to give Hudson-Odoi the ball and get him to run at Szoboszlai and see how good he is. And he dealt with it okay, but it was a lot more tricky than it would have been, and it meant that he was a lot less influential.
Yeah, we couldn't get out.
No,
we couldn't get out. That was the problem, wasn't it? It just kept coming back.
Exactly.
And our midfield was too easily bypassed. They were getting to sort of in and around are boxed far too easily, and you're just sort of like, what's happening here? And as you say, it was 11 minutes because I made a note of it. McAllister just passes the ball out of play. But, previous to that, Van Dijk had just given it away. Jones had just given it away. Salah's first touch in the game gave it away. And it was right across the team. Yeah. Obviously people love, highlighting individuals, getting stuck into individuals. That's the way of the world now, it seems. And there's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube on that one. But this was across the team.
When it's everyone,
yeah,
it's hard to look at individuals because it's clearly something that they're all suffering from. It's like one of those games where it really did look like they hadn't got off the bus yet. And to be honest with you, they were very lucky to get away with it because this is the Premier League. And normally, if you don't come with that right intensity in the Premier League, you will get punished. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying before about Forest. I watched the game in midweek against Fenerbahce. They look really good.
Yeah.
They put Fenerbahce away in what could have been a very tough game. They put them away 2-0 at half-time, cruised the second half, were able to make loads of subs at the right time. So I thought, wow, as preparations go, that's perfect for them. But then in the league, we have to remember there's a reason why they've got a new manager. And that reason was they played against Wolves at home and had 35 shots without scoring. And that was the team that we saw. The team who could have they had shot after shot after shot and were great in getting into good positions, then flapped it. And yes, some of those was because of defensive skill from us. But it was one of those games where you felt like the longer it went on, the more Forest was starting to feel like, shit, we really should have scored by now. So then in the second half, when Liverpool did start to kind of get back into the game, you're thinking, okay, well, this can be one of those where we shake it off and then we cruise away in the second half. Obviously, that didn't quite happen either.
Not quite. No.
But it was... I think it's the kind of game in a season like this one where there are things that you have to really kind of pay attention to, like we say, slow starts. And there are parts of it where you're just like, okay, we got away with that one, lads. On to the next one.
Yeah, in terms of what I said before, I want to just do a bit of a section on this, really. We'll come back to talking about, the rest of the first half, the second half, and what comes next and all that. But just on that thing I said at the top of the show about, of course, we're still in a season. We've still got aims for this season. We've got top 5 to go for. We are still in the Champions League, and we're waiting to see who our opponents are and some interesting results around that. But we'll wait and see. We're still in the FA Cup as well, of course, and we've got Wolves away coming up. But on the wider direction chat, I remember under Rodgers as an example, and you're seeing Coutinho and Sturridge and whatever, and you're like, we're playing good football here.
Yeah,
and I can see a world where next season we'll be good. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you're looking at this and you're like, okay, like I say, we're grinding it. We're good one week, we're bad in the next. We're just, I'm not really sure what we're doing. There's loads of question marks, isn't there? Not least around the fact that Konate, Robertson, Nioni, they're all out of contract this summer. And then the following summer, Jones, Salah, Van Dijk, Alisson, Gomez, Bajcetic, Endo, and Ramsey, which with loads of people are interested in, obviously. But so what I'm saying is like, we feel like we've had loads of upheaval, loads of ins and outs, loads of trouble, loads of problems. There's more in the post.
Much more in the post. And that's the kind of worrying part about it. Because you say about putting down a marker for next season. I don't know how many of this team, I would say there is probably six players from our best starting 11 who say, okay, with all going well, they'll be starting the first game of next season. That's Alisson, Kerkez, Van Dijk, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, Wirtz, Ekitike. Everyone else, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
And yes, that's half a team. That's a good spine, but it's half a team.
Yeah.
and that includes subs in that. Like, obviously, you'd expect. Well, I say we expect to see McAllister. We don't know if McAllister's staying. We don't know if Jones is staying. Like, there are question marks around literally everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, McAllister's popped up with the winner on the second attempt, but didn't have a great game again.
No.
And there's a question about his sort of speed around the pitch, which has been there for a while now. He is saying on record that I'm fully fit, and we're saying as people who are watching it every week, we don't look as fit as you used to.
Yeah.
So that's a question. So there seems to be, and then of course the stuff again, which the manager's not going to come out and say at any point, obviously. But what are the plans? We know your man Jacket's coming in, Jacquet. But who else? What else? Are we going to address the fact that we look really predictable in the final third of the field? Are we going to address the fact that we could do with wingers? All of a sudden it's really refreshing to see a 17-year-old lad taking people on and putting a cross in.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? And it's a bit like, we can't suddenly throw the weight of the world on that lad's shoulders, which I think the manager is trying to caution against. And I was I knew without even having looked at it that there was going to be this huge Ingemo's got to start every game now and all that. Looked, and there was. And I was like, I get it, don't get me wrong. Exciting, some great dribbling, contributed to, helped to lead towards a goal or one that was really, etc. and so on. You know what I mean? Did more, you can do the did more than Salah and Gakpo. Get why you would say that too. But equally, you can't just go, okay, next season, 38 games. Like.
No. It's funny, actually, because the Ngemo chat is really... This is the real interesting time for it for me, because there's no doubt that he made more of an impact than Gakpo and Salah. I don't think anyone can really argue with that. The stats back it up, the eye test back it up. But we have to remember, and this is the conversation we've been having about Chiesa for the last 18 months, it is easier to make an impact in the last 20 minutes as a sub than it is for 90 minutes in the game. However, if you said to me at the beginning of the season... if you said to me at the beginning of the season that Rio Ngemo is going to get 3 Premier League starts out of 38, I'd have been like, okay, I can see where that happens. And if you'd have said to me which games would they be in, I would say probably at home against a team in the bottom 5 of the table. And what's up next? Home against West Ham. So if it is one of those games, this feels like the time. Having had a positive impact... And then having that kind of game coming next, if I'm Slot, this feels like the perfect time to do it. But
we're talking about maybe make a faster start, lads, and maybe make a faster start at home, get the crowds up and all the rest of it. Yes. Well, he's a lad who's bums off seats, isn't
Absolutely.
he? To use a phrase back in the day about Harry Kuehl. But he is, isn't he? So if he started, there would be excitement around it, and we'd be like, oh, hello. And I'm sure West Ham don't want to face him. And where does they'll know exactly what Gakpo does and where he goes and how he does it, like everyone else in the football world right now. With him, they're a bit like, well, we haven't got a lot to go on here. He seems to be able to go both ways. As the manager referenced, he's looking stronger now as well, able to shake off challenges and stuff like that. We don't want to play. And he can switch sides, which he did in the game.
He did.
So, the idea that you're not predictable and that there's something that the opposition won't know about, use it then.
Yeah, I think so. And then you look at beyond the West Ham, you've got the 2 games against Wolves, one in the league and one in the cup. Now, the expectation would be that he didn't start in the last FA Cup game against Brighton, but there's a chance that he could start in this one. So maybe the next stage is to look at how he does with a little bit more game time in a short period of time, see how he deals with that, and then you can look at it from there. But this isn't going to mean he comes in against West Ham, he does brilliantly, he's going to start every game from now on. It doesn't mean that still. This is still a young man, as you mentioned, and this is still the business end of a big season for a club who are still hoping to be in the mix for trophies, plural. So the idea that he comes in and stays in, I think is still fanciful. But I do think you get to a point where you can give him a taste. Give him a taste of what, and say, okay, you've had some positivity here. Let's see if you can go to the next level. I also think it doesn't do Cody Gakpo any harm to be on the bench and watch a 17-year-old play in his place and be like, damn, I've got to step it up.
Yeah, exactly. Because when he did have opposition for his place, his figures were much better.
Exactly.
And whether that's like, just psychological, just, I don't for a minute think he's going into games or any of them, to be honest, and going, I'm not really arsed.
No.
But, there's an edge provided by the fact that emotionally inside you'll go, oh shit, and so you just might push yourself a bit more. And you can sort of, as someone who's, not doing the work, if you like, and just looking from afar, you can go, well, why wouldn't he do that anyway? But, we're complex creatures.
Absolutely,
that is why there are psychologists involved in sport, etc. and so on. So, yeah, you'd think it would make sense. But, right, let's go back to where we were up to in the game. So, just in terms of the first half, there wasn't a whole lot more to talk about. But I did want to mention, because we're going to build up to talking about something which I'm sure you've all seen. But Salah was, again, immediately dispossessed on just after the half hour when there was a long ball played into him and his touch wasn't the best. There's a promising position on a few minutes later. Tom plays in Salah, Gakpo's free and pleading for the ball. You can see a goal.
Yep.
Salah plays a terrible cross. Just after that, it ends up being that Van Dijk has to make a last-ditch intervention, or Forest are in again. He does make that last-ditch intervention, and that's great. And this is back to, we did deal with stuff that came into our box relatively well, albeit that we obviously brought a lot of that on ourselves. And just before the half-time as well, Salah gives it away after the long ball was played into him. There's a theme. So into the second half then, and talking about the stats, which always give part of the picture, but maybe not all of it. But here again, quite telling. So 0.06 from Liverpool generated in terms of chances in the first half. Second half expected goals is 1.7 for Liverpool, 0.37 for Forest. Possession goes from 41% for Liverpool to 66% for Liverpool. All of a sudden, we're having 4 shots on target, 4 big chances created. Forest had no shots on target at all in the second half and no big chances created in the second half. So, very much night and day in terms of, for both teams, really. And back to my thing that I feel like I'm saying every week, the scene setter for the second half is Konate on doing a matip, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Storming into their half on the ball, and you're like, here we go, on. And, when we forced 2 corners early on, and okay, they come back down the other end of the pitch, but Kirkes is putting a great tackle in, and, okay, you can't say it gets the away end up. I'm sure it did get the away end up, but that doesn't sort of, when it's a home, it's their home game, not ours. It's not quite the same, is it? But nevertheless, it's what you want. It's what you want to see. Milenkovic has that one where he's just ahead of Van Dijk and heads it wide. That's probably like their best chance of the second half, really. Then after that, theme, Salah wasteful in a good area. Jones has a shot blocked. There's a Gakpo cross, a Salah header. Jones has another one blocked, this time by the keeper. And all of that is within 10 minutes of the second half.
Yeah, you know what? It really reminds me of the Fulham game, the Fulham away game, where that was another one where the first half was woeful, but they did concede and go behind in that game. And then they came out in the second half and were like, okay, we know that it can't be that bad again. And they they got into it, and there were a couple of key moments just after half time, and that set the tone for the game. But you mentioned the Konate Matip impression. I think that was possibly one of the most important moments of the whole game, because it really did set the tone for both teams. Because Konate was like, no. Like, what do you do when you can't pass it into midfield? Okay, I'll just run with it instead. And you're going to give me space? Okay, I'm going to go with it. And then once he got to the final third, he didn't kind of, he didn't lose his head from going too high up. He didn't get vertigo. He found the pass that kept the move alive. And that is a statement of intent. That is like, whatever you thought we were going to be in the second half, in the first half, we are this now.
Yeah.
And Forest kind of dealt with it accordingly as well. But I just think a lot of the time, Liverpool are wanting to be better in the second half, because in a lot of games are decided in the second half. Probably more games are decided in the second half than in the first half. I think that's probably fair to say in Premier League. But that doesn't mean to say you have to be that bad in the first half. Like, you can still be okay and then raise your level. But thankfully, they were able to raise level. They were able to not quite get up ahead of steam, but certainly wrestle the initiative
It was
back.
better. There was something there, wasn't there? There was something to hang your hat on a little bit, at least, albeit that, once you saw more of the second half, sort of some of the same themes are coming back. So, there's a move where Salah tries to play, a pass with the outside of his foot, and it's not even close to coming off. You're sort of looking at it thinking, well, I don't really know what you were trying to do there. And I think the problem was, like, there was a head of steam and there was a determination to be better than the first half, but there was clearly still, that bit of genius, that point of difference, lacking something, not too many good ideas demonstrated really in the final third when they got there. And, Ekatike not really on it.
No, he wasn't.
Even some of his passing off. Yet again, we're talking about a moment where he should score with his head and doesn't score with his head. And, to be fair, if there's to be fair to him thing, it is that they were out very quickly into him. They were looking to shackle him. There's a couple of naughty little challenges on him and things like that. So that was clearly a thing. But, back to Salah. I hope, this time I'm allowed to just talk about a player not playing well for Liverpool without being labelled a fucking racist, by the way. But Salah was pretty easily marshalled by Nico Williams.
Yeah.
And there was a moment there, again, second half, not long before he subbed, where he's quite easily out-muscled by Williams and seems to sort of give up on that particular moment. Now, that pissed me off as a fan watching it, and I would suspect it pissed the manager off watching it.
It wasn't off that long after that, was he?
Exactly, that's what I mean. And I think you might have known as we're going through the show, I'm saying to you, here's a moment he's given away. Here's a moment where he didn't do something well. He did not play well in this game. And so what I'm getting to is, on the 76th minute, when Chiesa and Ingamoa come on for Salah and Gakpo, that was absolutely a deserved substitution for Mo Salah. Now, what we end up with is Laughgate, Smilegate, Gringate, whatever you want to call it, where a massive deal is made over the fact that he's seen grin and laugh and smile and whatever you want to call it as he comes off the pitch and then on the bench. Now, I can remember having debates about this before, and I can remember Mane as an example missing a chance in a game and laughing about it. And I can remember coming on podcast and saying that really pissed me off as a fan in the ground, like, what the fuck are you laughing at? But now that we're here and we're talking about this type of thing again, I just kind of think this thing doesn't matter that much. This is being massively overplayed. All players have emotions and egos and are human, and sometimes things will come out. Now, as long as it doesn't turn into something else, I think it's fine. And if he knuckles down and gets back in the side and performs better next week against West Ham or whatever, no one will give a shit. Meanwhile, obviously, people on social media, etc., will try to make a thing of it. With this though, with the stuff, sometimes stuff comes out. Well, even the fella who invented the concept of the inner chimp, Dr. Steve Peters, his inner chimp comes out, because I asked him that question when I interviewed him, and he said, yes, it does. I'll cut myself at shaving and go, fucking hell, or whatever, or laugh or cry or whatever it might be. So sometimes, no matter how good people think they are at managing their emotions just come out at times. And so him laughing, doing that, is his emotions coming out. And I just think it's not that big a deal. What's more worrying is, this is the longest Premier League goal drought of his career, 9 matches. And also, again, to just reinforce the fact that he absolutely deserves to come off, he had no shots. His expected assist was 0.23, because he's been pretty good at teeing up teammates, but not in this game. 1 key pass, 1 big chance created, 1 pass into the final third, 69% of his passes completed. That's not good in the Premier League. That is low in the Premier League. 50 touches. Defensively, final third possession won once. Possession lost 20. He was dribbled past twice, and he recovered the ball 3 times. No interceptions, no clearances. So both ways, he's not having a good game.
Look, I think, first of all, I'm going to break this into 2 sections. Mo Salah on the pitch Mo Salah off the pitch. Spoiler alert, the first one's more important. So let's talk about that. On the pitch, clearly, as you said, it was a very bad game for Salah. We are now at the stage of Mo Salah's career where his floor is lower than it has ever been. So there were always times, even when he was at his peak, that he wouldn't have the greatest game. We'd often say, oh, Salah's had a poor game, then he pops up and scores or assists a goal. But even in those games, he was like a 5 or a 6. And then he'd maybe do a goal contribution, bumping up to a 7 or 8. Now we're seeing 2s and 3s. This is the next phase of his career. No getting around it. And that's not to say that all we're going to get is 2s and 3s. Because if you remember, literally last week, we were talking about the improvement in his game against Brighton.
Yeah.
So it just means that we cannot rely on that all the time. It now means that it's going to go up and down, which means that he's not the person you need to be relying on anymore for that kind of fulcrum and goals and assists. Ekitike didn't have a great game. That happens. We were missing Wirtz massively. And that exacerbated how bad Salah was. The stuff you talk about him giving up, that annoys me as well. I can kind of see where it comes from. It's funny you mentioned the thing with Sadio Mane. I remember seeing in an interview where Salah said that one of the things that he used to do was he used to get really angry with himself when he missed a chance. And I think it was Robbo who said to him, hey, you know, everyone's watching you. And your body language and mindset has an effect on everyone.
Yeah.
So if you brush it off and say...
Wasn't that a slot? Wasn't that what Mo said Slot had said to him when he got interviewed?
Yeah, but I think it had happened before that.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So basically he started thinking, okay, I now need to pretend like it's all right, the next one will come along. And being, okay, well, bad things happen on the pitch, it's not a big deal. That kind of mindset feeds into other areas. I still think that kind of getting brushed off of the challenge is not the place to do it, but you can see how that happens. The off the pitch stuff, the smile, right. We said this when it was Konate early in the season. We said this when it was Nunes last season. People read far too much into things they don't need to read into. And I'll tell you why. Because we didn't hear we didn't hear the conversation. We don't know who was saying what to whom and what brought about that response. It wasn't like Robbo leaned over and was like, God, you were shit today, weren't you? And he was like, oh, yeah, I was. It doesn't matter, does it? We don't know that's what was said. We don't know what was said at all. I mean, I'll use an extreme example, but it kind of makes my point. Have you ever seen someone laugh at a funeral? Because I have.
Yeah.
Loads of times.
I've laughed at a funeral.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. Does that mean that...
Especially in the wake after half a bottle of whiskey.
Oh, yeah. We're not suggesting that Salah's been on the whiskey. But the point is that even at times of extreme grief and pain, there is sometimes things that make you laugh, involuntarily so.
Yeah.
We can't expect everybody to be looking, feeling visibly angry and upset all the time. You know how often there's a camera on him? All the time. So the idea that there might be one moment where he's not looking like he's really upset and angry, and we all obsess about that. Did we look at all the other moments? Does that mean that there was no other moments there where he was feeling a little angry, upset, or disappointed? We don't know because everyone's focusing on this one little thing. It's getting you nowhere. As you said, if this becomes a regular thing, then you can maybe look at it and say, okay, well, this is a problem. But to microanalyze something like this with no context does no one any good.
We know he's pissed off. His body language says he's pissed off. And someone in the comments is saying, well, he's walked past the manager, ignored him, he doesn't clap when he's coming up, all of this kind of stuff. Yeah, because he's pissed off, mate.
Yeah.
He's pissed off. And but maybe, and the manager probably looked at it and thought, well, when you've lost out physically and then thrown your hands up in the air, on a day when you keep giving the ball away every 5 minutes and keep making the wrong decisions as well, it's a day when you're going to have to come off, mate.
Yeah.
And we know that he's never been good as a player that comes off. He's had absolute murder with Klopp. He's come out earlier this season and said what he said and caused all that shit. And I absolutely, got stuck into him for that. And I will do again if he chooses to do it again, because you've got to think about the team, the club, the manager, the wider, bigger picture, which is Liverpool need to win football matches. And if you're having a fucking stinker, then you're going to need to come off, mate.
Yeah.
And you might not even start games. And no one is Peter Pan. No one stays young forever. And so sometimes, especially in top level sport, things happen where you start to melt and you're not as good as you once were. And look, I just saw some stuff yesterday though where I thought, you've gone too far, where it's like, you don't need to start saying, oh, well, he's on 400 grand a week or whatever. Yeah, we know he is, yeah. And we were all happy that he was. And, when he was unveiled on a pitch with a crown on his head and they turned the Anfield lights on, we were all absolutely delighted about that. And, behind the scenes, maybe there was some doubt. Well, there was some doubt because that's what took so long, wasn't it? About would something like this happen? And look, his numbers are falling off a cliff currently compared to the Mo Salah we know and love over the seasons that have come before. So there's a balance to be struck on what we say about him and how we act about him, and the very fact, as you said, that in fairly recent times, like the other week, played all right, done all right. And so, it's just a bad day at the office. And I think if it turns into no more than that, we're all fine with it. That should include him.
The whole getting upset getting subs business. Like, is he the only player who's ever done that? No. I remember Daniel Sturridge used to do that all the time. And people used to make the same conversations about him. And it was just pissed off. And what does every single manager say after there's an incident about that? I'm glad he's angry.
I'd rather be pissed off.
I'd rather be pissed off than not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a reason why they all say that, because it's true. So those kind of things can be brushed off as minimal. I think really it helps everybody to concentrate all of your analysis on the things that happen on the pitch, because there we can be more certain about what we're seeing. On off the pitch stuff, there are so many variables that we don't know about. As I said before, the context of what was said and when it was said to whom. On the pitch, that's where we should be judging them.
Well, and ultimately, look, the substitutions worked. So that's two of them that we talked about there. The other two is Gomez and Robbo come in for Jones and Kirkes. Liverpool then start jumping on the long throw train. There's at least three of them launched in from Gomez, and then maybe there's a bit of kidology in the fact that he doesn't play one and instead plays it to Dom, and they're expecting one to come in at that point and stuff like that. And look, there's all the ideas about should we do that? Is that something Liverpool are going to do going into the future? Right now, in the short term, look, it worked eventually, kind of, and we got a winner.
Same thing Fulham did to us.
Yeah, and look, other things we can talk about the subs. Well, for me, I think you touched on it before. In terms of the absolute stuff that's thrown at the manager week after week, do this, do that. Why haven't you done that? Blah 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 blah. For me, like the Chiesa stuff. Yet again, you see why he doesn't start games. He comes on the pitch. He should be more switched on. He should be more ready. He should be more fit, fresh, and all the rest of it than the rest of them, because they've all been on the pitch in a high intensity game. And yet he's quite switched off. He's waiting for a ball and it's nicked off him. He's trying to beat Williams in a very, what I would call, obvious way, and is easily out-muscled and done for strength and speed. And he's just not that good, lads. He really isn't. Like these people who, why isn't he playing more? Why isn't he playing more? He doesn't deserve to be a starter. He started games and not done anything in the games that he started to say start again. And then you go, oh yeah, but if he started more, will he be more up to speed? And then I just don't think, you're talking about floors and ceilings. I just don't think there's loads more there than what we've seen.
I agree.
And like it was a bit of a gamble buying him. His injury record, and in particular the bad one he had, was known. And I can remember listening to an Italian journalist at the time we bought him who was saying, they took a gamble here, Liverpool, because there's a worry that he doesn't get back to where he was because of that injury. I think that's what we're seeing.
Yep, I agree. It's strange as well, because I was so in love with the player that he was at his peak. I think I actually wrote something for the Echo saying Liverpool should sign him back in 2021. But when Liverpool did sign him, I was also very much like, well, this isn't guaranteed to work. This might not work. But it was a low-risk plan because of the fee involved. And yeah, I think we're going to come to a point at the end of this season where we probably will come to the end. But it's a shame because obviously there's nothing wrong with him as a human. He's proved that time and again, but it's a football team. It's not, it's not a charity. So you have to look at it in terms of ability on the pitch. And I know that the other big thing people talk about is that the fact that, Gakpo's not playing great and he's still playing every week. It's like...
Oh, are we on, by the way? A few people saying no stream.
Oh, dear.
And it's carrying on. Okay. I'm just looking at a frozen me, which is not a good image at the minute. I'm not pulling on a flattering face.
No. But yeah, so the thing with Gakpo is like, he's valid claims to say that he's not been playing great. But if you're the guy who's coming in, you have to be better. And if he's not better, then you're not taking the claims to come in. That is that simple. But look, I think going back to what we were saying before about what the future looks like, there's a few players in the squad who are playing to have a continued Liverpool future.
Yeah.
And how that works out over the next few weeks will kind of determine whether they get to do it or not. So I think, again, going back to what we said before, they got away with one yesterday. There's no getting away from that.
Getting some comments that are just making me chuckle there. Getting there, Slotter's managing the stream. Chiesa has hacked the stream. Yeah.
Maybe we found his true calling as a tech.
But anyway, let's keep on going. So those the end, the last throwings of the game, if you like, where Liverpool actually win it. There are still a few moments there in terms of Forest. So they got forward a couple of times, won a couple of corners. Robbo's got in the way of one effort and things like that. So we continue to still defend pretty well in terms of our box from corners and things like that. And then that then gave the opportunity for Rio to start influencing the game. As I said before, the Ingamo across the Ekatike header, he should score that. And obviously the defender, Aina, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Booms it off McAllister. It goes in. That would have been one of the wildest goals ever, wouldn't it? Unfortunately, that was obviously ruled out for handball. I was just like, when I was watching this, I was just like, I get that you're going to tell me that it's the law. I kind of think the law's an ass. Like, I totally got what McAllister was saying. And I don't think this is just red-tinted glasses. I think in that circumstance, the way that went in, I just don't think that should be ruled out. He's not seeking any advantage whatsoever from his arm.
No.
So, you know what I mean? And it's not like he's not Maradona in it, you know what I mean? He's not
moving his arm to the ball, he's not making himself bigger.
No. He's turned his back.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right to say that the law is the law on this one. And it's one of those where there is no wiggle room. Once it hits the arm of the goal scorer, it's just...
yeah, I don't know.
And it's funny because, when the first replays were coming from behind the goal, I was basically doing one of them, right up against the screen, trying to see if it hit his back or his arm. And I was like, it's his back! It's his back! It's definitely hit his back!
From the first angle, it looks like that, doesn't it?
And then you see the second angle where you see his elbow move after the ball hits, so you're just like, okay, it's a handball. But I agree with you. I think that's something that they should look at. I don't think they will. But I think it's something they should, because I always think, regardless of what context it is, whether it's that kind of thing, whether it's a penalty incident, handball, there should always be intent involved. Like, it used to be, the foul was intentional handball. The law said it was intentional handball. It didn't just say handball. So when they took that out, they made it so much more complicated, unnecessarily so. And yes, it will still be subjective in terms of there'll be times when some people say he didn't intend to make himself bigger, and sometimes he would. But I don't think it should be blanket if you're the goal scorer. If someone blams it against you and it hits you and it goes in. So I was at Everton. I think it was the Palace game where the winning goal, the same thing happened. One of the defenders hit it against Jack Grealish and it went in, but he hit it against his knee and it went in. And it was exactly the same situation. He basically turned his back to it to block it, it just hit his knee. So the only difference between the two incidents is that where the ball was kicked towards. There was no difference in the person who got hit. And that shouldn't be what leads to a disallowed goal. However, I do think, considering the context of what happened, considering the context of the Forest fans singing for Arnie all game long, having the goal disallowed and then having the same fella score the winner a few minutes later actually made it better.
Yeah, there's loads of sort of schadenfreude of, in the way we sort of win it and the way it pisses their fans off and them singing that daft song and all of that. Like, there's loads of that. There's absolutely bucketfuls of that. And, like, I think it's one of those where, you can tear it apart all you want. You can say, oh, we didn't play well and we should have done this and we should have done that and this isn't great and it doesn't look well for the future and all of that. But if you're coming back from Nottingham as a player, a manager, a fan, someone who works for the club, whatever, there's just that's fucking, like, there is no better way to win a football match than in the very last throes of it. And, that thing of that I mentioned at the very top about Liverpool doing that more in the Premier League than anyone else. I just think that's like a Liverpool DNA thing.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like, it's something that's carried through various teams. I think it's something about the way, the support, the nature of the club, whatever it might be. It's a thing that, we've done it late so often.
Not even the first time we've done it there on that pitch.
And, we used to talk about it you used to talk about it all the time, about Ferguson and Man United and about sides that weren't that great, but just, just found a way and won somehow and all of that. So that aspect of it, that battle, that fight, that the defending, there's something in that's, well, A, brilliant, and also B, something hopefully the Reds can just grasp onto and turn into something. And, it is 3 wins on the spin. You only have to look at the Canate cartwheel, which is absolutely tremendous, isn't it?
It was amazing. Honestly, like, I didn't think that I could enjoy that moment more until I saw that. I was
Brilliant.
just like, what is he doing? And then obviously, like, at the other end when he jumps into the crowd and stuff like that, like,
brilliant.
Yeah, it really was. And it kind of goes to show how much these fellas are invested in wins in football matches. And at times when that has been questioned about a lot of them, including him, I think it's just a nice little reminder that no, they are 100% in it. And I said just now, it's not the first time we've done that on that pitch. It did remind me very much of the Nunes winner from, was it 2023? The first season Forest were up in the league. And again, that was a 97-minute winner. And everyone just kind of going absolutely ballistic after it. And yeah, sometimes you just have those feelings where a win like that gives you more than a boring 2-0. Sometimes you get those things where it's like, okay, let's make it count. And I do think the fact that this was on the weekend where Villa didn't win, where Chelsea didn't win, and both of them were at home against promoted teams.
Yep.
So Liverpool have really been able to make that advantage count.
And we're all going to stick, we'll swap this from the Everton trackie and get behind the mighty Toffees tonight. Come on! The only time that I want Everton to win is right now. Playing against Man United tonight. Love the Blues to do us a little favour there. That'd be nice. But, look, I try and look for positives and sometimes we get hammered if we're positive, hammered if we're negative. Sometimes you just can't win being in a space where you talk about Liverpool or write about Liverpool or whatever it might be. I mean, even 6 points off 2 promoted sides away, a few weeks ago we'd be like, we're all over the show and we're crap against promoted sides. We can't beat them at home. Both of these sides took points off us at Anfield. Even that, I'm like, okay, I get it. I know what all the experts have said. I've seen it with my own eyes. But there's part of me that's going, I'm marking that as progress, to be honest with you. I just am. And if you don't like that, so
But I mean, Chelsea's a perfect example. I mean, we're very kind of inward looking about all this kind of stuff. Chelsea have so far played 5 games against the promoted teams. They've won 1. And They not only did they draw at home with Burnley like we did, they actually lost at Ellen Road. We only drew. We were about to win and then drew in the last minute. They lost. So as much as it's bad, this record against the promoted teams this season from Liverpool, and it is bad. I'm not dressing up as anything other than that. The teams we're fighting against are also bad. So it still gives us a chance.
100%, yeah. I mean, I think that you're right, because, there's a lot of, what does this signal now, and can Liverpool go on and claim one of those spots and all that? Like, they're not brilliant either. They're not perfect either. And what I think's good about it is that in a weekend where, as you say, two teams that are probably in this fight for these spots themselves have faltered, and we've taken advantage. And so, bringing it back to the start again, that will have pissed off all the hate watchers. And again, that's worth a smile. That's worth a bit of glow. That's worth a little bit of swagger in your step. And let's just enjoy that bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can get dragged into all that, we're not playing well, and I get why you would, but just enjoy that beef. The right side of the beef, the fact that we won this weekend and loads of roast dinners got lashed around the living room because loads of people wanted Liverpool to lose, and then we won in that fashion. And like, I even heard it before. Like, I love it when it's like, when, talking about Salah and the inner chimp escaping. I was listening to the radio before, and the fella was a Chelsea fan, and I know he is, but he's a good broadcaster and all the rest of it, and, blah, blah, blah. But he couldn't help himself. The chimp came out when he was talking. I was laughing my head off, making a brew, because he said, where's it come all of a sudden that, the automatic offside can see through people? And is it like an X-ray machine? And I'm like, what? Do you know, have you just really said that on the radio? Because it doesn't matter, mate. His foot played him onside, and look, we all think stuff like that's a bit mad. And we've got on our Twitter bio, VAR is shite and all of that, but it's here, and for once we frigging benefited from it.
The funny thing about it is that now people are all going back to saying, why is it all these computer generated images? Why can't we have the stills where they draw the lines? It's like, you're kidding me. The thing that everyone was complaining about for like the last year or so, where the lines are too thick, or it's not the right angle, or it wasn't taken at the right point. That's the whole reason semi-automated offsides have come in, because there was too much complaints about that way of doing it. So yes, they are computer generated. Yes, you could argue that makes them easier to manipulate if you're a conspiracy theorist. But the fact remains, as you said, is that VAR is, for better or worse, here to stay, and we are going to have to deal with it. And look, there are times where it looks like Liverpool have got away with one. I would like to remind you all, there are plenty of times where they haven't, and it's gone in the other direction.
Yeah. No, you let it go. Right, on that, we'll leave it there for the free show. I'm still looking at a frozen image of myself with a frowning face and two hands like this. Hopefully you're not.
Well, it's a thumbnail sorted.
I know, yeah. Yeah, we'll get that as the thumbnail for this week. So Liverpool, obviously, you've got West Ham coming up, a double header against Wolves, then Tottenham at home. All winnable games, yes. All games that Liverpool should win. Let's hope they do win, and whatever happens, we'll be here next week talking about it all again. Come over and join us on the subscriber show. Come and get involved with the Patreon. Throw in, help us keep the lights on, help us keep it going. If it's not for you, you can throw in on Buy Me a Coffee as well. Just look up Buy Me a Coffee, the Late Challenge. You'll find us on there, and you can buy us a virtual Barry's tea to help us keep going as well. Thanks for your support as ever. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Soz about the stream, and we'll see you next week. Do, as I say, come over and join us on the subscriber show. Ta-da!